What's up, everybody? Welcome to Let's Get Drunk and Talk Comics. I am Dexter. Mikey's not here with me today. He'll be back for our next video coming up. We'll be doing a Cyclops slander video coming up. Reasons why Scott Summers is a terrible character or a terrible person, depending upon how you want to look at it. Sorry, Cyclops lovers. But today, I want to talk about Marvel sales and the SJW problem. Let's get drunk and talk comics.
Awesome.
So DC has been doing very well with their sales recently, thanks to Rebirth, which is awesome, especially if you love DC Comics and those characters. Marvel, however, has been in a little bit of a slump. So back in April, they had a retailer summit, and David Gabriel, their VP of Sales, said that what the message that they were getting was that people didn't want diversity. And he even goes so far as to say that may not be the case, but that's what we were hearing. You know, they don't want women being pushed. They don't want minorities being pushed. He did go and backpedal those comments very shortly after. He actually called the same outlet who put the story out to further clarify his comments and to say that the new characters were not going to be going anywhere. Which, of course, they're not. You know, especially when you look at characters like Miles Morales, like Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. They've been doing quite well. Even Squirrel Girl does well, which I really don't understand because I've never really liked Squirrel Girl. But that's a personal preference thing. But Marvel has been in a little bit of a sales slump, and that has given a certain group of people on Twitter and on YouTube what they feel is a license to further push this idea that they've been pushing for some time, that Marvel's problem is the diversity, what they perceive as forced diversity. I've been unsure what to classify these people as. They're not exactly alt-right, but you know, they don't all identify as being alt-right, rather, even though they pretty much act the same as alt-right people. But for the time being, we'll just call them alt-SJW, because that's what someone I saw in a comment section on YouTube called them recently, and I just felt like it kind of fit, actually. These are the people who have a problem with SJWs, social justice warriors as they perceive them. People who they think are pushing way too hard for diversity and for representation, and because of that they feel they're ruining my comics, which is kind of absurd. Comics have always changed. In fact, does anybody remember the 90s and all the ridiculous costumes and character changes that we'd had with a lot of the same characters still, but just weird stuff. Wasp, for instance, became basically an actual wasp person rather than just Janet Van Dyne using Hank Pym's Pym particles to grow and be small and have wings and shit. However that works. I actually don't know how Janet's wings work. That's for a later Do You Even comic episode. But anyways, these people have now felt, this is what we've been saying. The SJW problem is the problem, and that's why Marvel Comics are tanking. Well, the reality is they're not really tanking. They're not doing as well. Currently, DC is definitely doing better. But you're looking at a market that's pretty much shared by these two companies for the most part. In fact, Image Comics actually broke back up into 15% not too long ago. We actually spoke with Matt Hawkins, who's over the Top Cow division, about that on an episode of The Drunken Dork, or Jake and Tom Conquer the World, that I guested on. Shout out to those guys. But he actually said they'd hit 15%, which hadn't happened for them in a while. And DC and Marvel really don't want the indie publishers to get up that high because it cuts into their own profit margins. So, you know, you're looking at a market, though, that's pretty much shared by these two companies. So 85% of the market, not really 85 because there's other indie publishers, but we'll say 80% or so of the market is comics being bought that are either DC or Marvel. There's always been this back and forth with the two companies over the years. And, of course, there's a strange war between Marvel and DC fans that's always existed that I've also never really understood. I love Marvel, but, in fact, if you look at my bookshelf here, the majority of these trades are DC, actually. There are all of 2 trades sitting here that are Marvel. And the reason for that is I like to read DC more in trades, and I buy current issues of Marvel. It's just how I read them. So I'm both a Marvel and a DC fan. I've never really understood the discord there. But if you want to talk about the sales slump that Marvel is currently going through, and they are, I don't think it's diversity and SJWs. I think Marvel's making a lot of bad business decisions. And there's actually an article that just came out on The Atlantic that touches on a lot of these points. I don't agree with everything in the article, but I do agree with a lot of the points, and I'll post a link to that in the description for this. But basically, you've got Marvel doing a few different things. One is shuffling their creative teams around, which I think is a big problem. I think we've had books in the past that really hit a great stride, and then Marvel came in and shuffled up the creative team. And I think a good example of that would be the Ultimates, the more recent incarnation of that. The current series that's running is good, Ultimates 2, but damn, is it not what it was on the first round, because Al Ewing is a great writer, but I want to say it was Kenneth Rocafort that was doing the art on that series. Just fucking nailed it. I mean, that was such a great team. And I don't hate the art on the new series as much as some people do, although the most recent issue was, it was not very good. And I feel bad for that artist because she's actually taken to Twitter to start asking people what they don't like about the art. I personally can't characterize exactly what it is, but I would say while some styles stylistically are very simple, I think hers is sort of overly simplistic, I guess would be the best way to put that. But anyway, you got shuffling around of the creative teams. You've got too many relaunches of the books. Ultimates 2, now just relaunching after, they took Rockfort off of that book, if I've got the artist correct. And I think that kind of hurt the book a little. You see, when you do relaunches, this big jump up in numbers, but that declines issue to issue after that. In fact, in April, the last sales chart that we've got right now, Marvel had 5 of the 10 books in the top 10, but they were all, number 1s and number 0 and relaunches and all that. So we see attrition come after that, and we see the sales start to decline on these books. So, I think that's very worth noting. But they're not tanking, like I said. I mean, you got 5 of the top 10 books for the month. You're doing pretty good. The previous month before that, they had 4, and DC had 5. And then Walking Dead just pretty much always sells. But you've got those relaunches. That's a big issue. Another big issue that Marvel has is just too many damn events. I don't have a problem with events when they're good. I'm really enjoying Secret Empire right now. It's fantastic, despite the problems that a lot of people may have with it. I think it's been a very enjoyable event so far. I'm enjoying this as much as I was enjoying Secret Wars, and I enjoyed Secret Wars all the way up until the end. But one of the problems that Secret Wars had that this one isn't necessarily doing, Secret Wars upended everything. Everything stopped, and all the books coming out at the time were either Secret Wars or they were Battle World. And I enjoyed all of those, but they cut a few things short. The Doc Green storyline in Hulk was really enjoyable at that time, and it just stopped dead in its tracks. And even though he was still drawn as Doc Green in the book that had to do with Ultimate Comics during that, he wasn't really Doc Green anymore. He was kind of Hulk again. And that's happened a lot. Civil War II, that happened as well, and it was kind of a problem. When you have good storylines running, you don't have to stop them just because your event's going on. And actually, there's some series right now where they're just letting the stories continue to play out before anything happens with Secret Empire. And I'm glad that they seem to be kind of learning from some of what's been going on. But there's been too many events. The big events and the smaller events, too. Monsters Unleashed, as excited as I was for that as an idea and with the first issue, God, that was just terrible. And also Inhumans vs. X-Men. Now, Death of X, by the way, is really good. If you hadn't read that, I can highly recommend that. But Inhumans vs. X-Men was really, really bad. And Civil War II was really disappointing for a lot of people. And I was actually enjoying that one a few issues in. Even when they killed off Hulk, still wasn't really having a major problem there. But as it continued on, it continued to drag. And again, it interrupted a lot of other really good stories in the single books. So events are a huge problem for Marvel, and that's a discussion that a lot of people are having. There's a lot of people who agree with that. There's just way too many damn events. You doing at least one major event every year, plus your smaller events, and that's something that DC isn't really doing. They just did Rebirth, which was their huge, major rehaul of their entire line, and a lot of people really appreciated it because a lot of people did not like the New 52, and the New 52 ran for 5-6 years, maybe longer than that, I don't know, and someone can let me know in the comments about that. But that's, I think, got a lot to do with the issues with sales. Is just it's poor business practices more than anything. I don't think it really has to do with the fact that people don't like these newer characters that are diverse characters. I don't know what the sales numbers for like Totally Awesome Hulk are, but I actually like Amadeus as Hulk. Not everybody does, and that's okay. But I know Miss Marvel has always continued to sell pretty well. I know Spider-Man, that is the Miles Morales book, is selling pretty well. Like I said, Unbeatable Squirrel Girl is not a huge seller, but it hasn't had it's had a pretty standard amount of attrition, and she's got a pretty dedicated fan base. So I don't think Marvel's ever going to like stop putting out Squirrel Girl books. So, you know, again, it's not the SJWs that are ruining Marvel's sales at the very least. And I think it was an absurd comment from their VP of sales. And I don't really know why he would have said that, because if you start looking at the numbers on the books, a lot of these books that are led by, you know, minority characters and female characters are actually the ones that are performing better issue to issue. So it was a very strange comment, I think, for him to have made in the first place. But I think it's also indicative, along with the fact that we're getting, I think it's called Generations coming up, that Marvel does, at least in some way, feel that that's the case, and that they're sort of backpedaling on some of the things that they've done in the last few years. And maybe that's just a reason to say, maybe don't replace the majority of your characters, or at least your mainstays, all at once. I mean, I think we got Jane Foster becoming Thor, which, by the way, Mighty Thor is another book that's actually still performing very well. But we got Jane Foster going into the role of Thor, Sam Wilson going into the role of Cap, Kamala went into the role of Miss Marvel a little earlier than that, I think, and Carol into the role of Captain Marvel, Amadeus becoming Hulk, and then Miles being introduced into the 616 universe, all within a pretty short period of time. And there's other characters, too, that I'm sure I'm totally forgetting. But maybe if they kind of eased into all that a little bit more, you might not have had some of the negative fan backlash that we got. But regardless, things just are what they are. And for me, as much as I do consider diversity and representation and good, positive representation, that's something that's not always made clear. That's what people are asking for, not just to be represented in the books, but to have some positive representations. As much as I do think that's important, the thing I put first at the end of the day is story quality. And to me, nothing should be more important than that. Your writing and your artists. And that actually is another thing I want to say about as far as the business practices and the way that editorial and the company itself is approaching some of this. Axel Alonso said at I forget exactly where he said this, but a while back, I want to say it was at a con, he said, quote, "I don't really think that artists move the needle anymore," which I think that's pretty absurd. We're not in the 90s anymore where it really became more about the artists, and the artists became just rock stars, and that's why you had so many creators leave to create Image comics, because they had suddenly this higher profile and people cared a lot more about it. And we're not in a position like that anymore, and I do think people are paying a little more attention to the writers, but the artists are still really important. In fact, the Ultimates book now is not selling as well as it was before with the previous artists. So I think that's another thing that Marvel has a poor focus on. They're not making sure to, pump these artists up as much as they are some of their writers. I'm more of a story guy myself, but the art's got to be good. Well, I like for it to be good. I'm still reading Ultimates, so, who's to say on that? But, that it's just something that I think people aren't really getting is this stuff is so much more multifaceted and complex than to just boil it down to one thing. To just boil it down to diversity is the issue, or fucking SJWs, or whatever. Or even for me to just boil it down to just any specific practice that Marvel is doing. I think there's a lot of factors that are going into this, and they're causing the situation that they're currently in. Also, as I said before, they're not tanking. We're talking about the big two, and these people talk about it in some way as though they assume that Marvel is just going to tank so badly they go away, and we don't have it at all anymore, and that's pretty absurd. Marvel went bankrupt in the 90s, still around. So, I don't think we're ever going to not have books coming from the big two. And another one that I want to point out, too, that people aren't paying attention to is we're living in a different age now. print in general is not selling as well because we're in this digital age. And Marvel is keeping all their digital numbers pretty close to the chest, as is DC. So we don't really know, on like subscription services like Marvel Unlimited, A, how that service is doing in general, and B, what people are reading. And I don't know if Marvel is tracking what people are reading, but if they're not, they're just shooting themselves in the foot.
Okay, I'm the only one in this room professional enough that I know of the character's block 40. I'm the only one. No, is everybody all right? You all right? No, that's it.
I made a comment a few weeks back when Black Panther and the Crew was got canceled about the fact that Guardians actually never sold all that well, but they just made a buttload of money with these last two films. So, obviously some things take a little bit more time to build their audience and for people to find it and to even realize that they're interested in it. So, we need to know as people who want to talk about the industry as a whole and things like sales, how are these things doing on Comixology? How are they doing with the direct digital sales? How are they doing 6 months down the road with Marvel Unlimited when you can read it on there if you're paying the subscription fee? Because quite frankly, there's books that I want to read right now, but I can only buy so many books in a month. So there's some stuff that I'm going to wait until it's on Marvel Unlimited. That's a great service, by the way. It's $9.99 a month, and you can read everything that's up, which I think is most of what's been published over the last 70 some odd years. So I really enjoy Unlimited. But I think we need to be paying attention to that as well. Print sales we may be focusing too much on that specifically because obviously we know that there are a lot of people coming into comic book fandom right now that don't feel that a brick and mortar store is a comfortable environment to go into. It's kind of always been a white boys club in a lot of ways, and it's at least perceived that way by some of the newer fans coming in. So I am sure that some of these books that are not doing well print sales wise probably gaining an audience through digital, and it probably pisses them off when they find series that they really enjoy and they're getting canceled because they're not getting sold in physical stores. Now personally, I like to have physical comics in my hand. I don't mind reading digital, but I would always prefer to actually buy my books. But again, that's just a personal thing. But I wanted to talk before I kind of finish things off, because I know it's a little rambling. It's kind of a new thing that I'm doing, kind of a forum, kind of a think piece type of video. I wanted to take a moment to point out some of the books that I am really enjoying that I think people are sleeping on a little bit. And I did look at some of the sales numbers and some of them over time before I started this video. And holy crap, where did I set the comics? They're right behind me. Now, one that I start with here, obviously, the sales have started to hurt on this one a little, and I think a lot of that has to do with the controversy going around it and people just being upset over the whole storyline. But Sam Wilson and Steve Rogers are both great. I really enjoy Nick Spencer as a writer, and I didn't realize that I have been enjoying him for a long time. It was only more recently that it was pointed out to me that he actually wrote Superior Foes of Spider-Man and the Ant-Man series that I really enjoyed. So if you're not reading those, especially if you're not reading them because you're mad about Secret Empire, really take some time to read those two series. I think they're fantastic, very well done, especially Sam Wilson, although I enjoy Steve Rogers too a lot. A couple other ones that have just been fantastic, Kingpin and Bullseye. I don't even know what the sales numbers on these are. I have not looked at them, but these have been so enjoyable. And I'm not reading the rest of the Running with the Devil story or banner or whatever you want to call it. I'm actually not even reading Daredevil or Elektra. But I have been really enjoying both of these, most especially Bullseye. He has, I think it's Ed Brisson, has made Bullseye an absolute badass again in this book. And I love that, because Bullseye is a really cool character. He's an absolute bastard, but he's a real badass. And then Kingpin's been very enjoyable, too, because of the new public image he's trying to get to. And if anybody read that recent issue of Doctor Strange, where he drove that car into the monster, and also what's going on with him in Secret Empire itself, I think we're going to come out of this with Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, basically saying, hey, I'm the guy who really helped out with some of the stuff that was going on during this whole thing. So, really, I think still trying to change what the public perceives of him, but he's still the Wilson Fisk that he's always been. He's still an absolute bastard, too. So really enjoying both of those. Something else I'm really enjoying, as I mentioned earlier, anything written by Al Ewing. And as my buddy Task likes to say, protect Al Ewing at all costs. Especially U.S. Avengers. This one started off with like 150,000 in sales, and it's really gone down, and that really sucks because it's actually been very good. I think Al may be slightly annoyed that his book was pulled into Secret Empire, but rather than be really shitty about it, he's just kind of been very tongue-in-cheek in the book about it. And some of my favorite moments in Secret Empire have actually taken place in this book. Boom! Hail Hydra, baby. So protect Al Ewing at all costs. He is one of my absolute favorite writers going on right now. One of my other favorite writers going on right now, and I'm actually skipping ahead in my stack a little bit, but Mr. David Walker. And, you know, with Black Panther and with Black Panther and the Crew and World of Wakanda, people have had some mixed opinions about that. And I think that has a lot to do with Ta-Nehisi Coates and his style of writing, and that he isn't necessarily a comics writer. He's somebody who has written a lot of other stuff and has now come into comics writing. I like Coates' stuff just fine, but I love David Walker's stuff. And if you want to talk about a black creator who does talk about social justice issues and things within their series, this guy nails it. Occupy Avengers, another book that I know people are sleeping on because it's not doing that well. So unfortunately, it'll probably be canceled before too long, but this series has been great, especially these last couple issues with the town full of Skrulls. That has been a really cool thing. And this first issue of Luke Cage just fucking was so cool, man. Art-wise as well. The artist on this, Blake, I'm not actually familiar with. And I can always just edit a little. Nelson Blake II. Man, the art in this is great. And I think it really nails a lot of Luke Cage and what he is as a character, especially now. Luke Cage's character was changed a lot by Brian Michael Bendis, most especially, and that's when he really started to gain a lot more popularity too, and that's kind of the current iteration of the character that we know. And Walker really handles him being that street-level superhero who's there to help out the people who don't always get attention from the rest of the superhero community. He's there to help the little guy, and I really appreciate the way that Walker handles that in the book. And I loved what he said in the afterword at the end of the book about his connection to Luke Cage as a person and a fan. So definitely check both of those out if you're not. The last couple I've got here, I'm just going to kind of quickly go through. Nick Fury, this new series has been especially cool, and these very minimalist covers have been especially cool. Some people are not liking it as much. I'm loving it. I think it's a really cool spy story. You know, it's really it's your James Bond, the super cool super spy, and I'm really enjoying that. And it's cool to see Nick Fury Jr. get his own solo series like this. So that one's great. Hawkeye by Kelly Thompson, also really good. Really captures the continues the sort of the feeling and the essence of Matt Fraction's series and the spirit of that. And that's big shoes to fill, but just focusing more on Kate instead of on Clint. And obviously I'm not Team Kate or Team Clint because I'm enjoying both of the Hawkeye series going on right now. But this has been a lot of fun. Finger Guns. Been a really cool one. The last two, Iron Fist. And I know people have been mad as hell about Iron Fist, but this has been fun. Super cool kung fu action tournament storyline. Been a real cool series. But if there's one thing that I can definitely say without question has been my absolute favorite thing coming out from Marvel currently, motherfucking Thanos. This book is bloody and violent and over the top and also just really, really damn cool. Now, of course, it's Jeff Lemire. He's a great artist. And actually, Peralta, I'm not as familiar with their art, but the art in this is stellar. It is so good. Thane, his son that he tried to kill back in Infinity, has come back into play. He has gathered up a team to help him steal the Phoenix Force. And he's basically sort of dethroned Thanos as being the Mad Titan. This issue especially followed him after what happened with all that. And it was really cool seeing Thanos kind of brought down a peg. So, you know, Marvel is putting out some killer books right now. I hate that a lot of people are sleeping on it. I don't have a problem with people enjoying the DC books, and I'm enjoying some of that stuff right now as well. just enjoy the button by all means. But man, don't sleep on Marvel. And don't say it's because Marvel's putting out shitty books. Don't say it's because of the SJWs and diversity. And don't say they're putting out shitty books, because they are putting out some killer stuff right now. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that the SJWs are ruining my comics? Do you think that Marvel has been using some poor business practices? Do you think there's other external factors like print not being what it used to be these days? Let me know in the comments what you think, and if you've got some Marvel series that you're enjoying, by all means, drop those. And if you want to call me a cuck because I'm wearing a Miss Marvel shirt, fucking whatever. There's better uses of your time, but, you know, you do you. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Please leave a comment, like I said. Like, subscribe. Make sure you hit the little ding bell thing so that you know when we put up new videos. We're going to be putting out some more content coming up. Like I said, Cyclops Slander will be coming. And most of all, just thank you for your time, especially if you're somebody who's watched our videos before or if you're a new watcher. And I guess that's all I got. I need a good way to end this segment out. I need a good name for the segment. Arum's got his Arum's Forum. I need something like that. I need a good catchy name. I'll try to come up with that before I do another one of these. Thoughts from the bookshelf. It's an idea. Anyway, thanks for your time. I'm going to put a couple of videos right here where you can see them. Actually, it won't be right here because that's not how it works anymore. But when we go to the end card, they'll be right here. I guess. Unless YouTube changes things again on me. Because they do that sometimes. But thanks for watching. And I'll see you next time.